Hello, and welcome back to the Garden of Grace Devotion. My name is Pastor Katie, and I'm one of the pastors at Trinity Lutheran Church in Lilburn, Georgia. Today, I'd like to share with you that I've begun to feel as though God has been following me around and leading me different places. I do believe that this is the case in general. I believe that God, through the Holy Spirit, lives within us and dwells among us and leads and guides us. But lately, the last few weeks or so, I've just been seeing this more and more and more. And for me, it started yesterday. When I received this text message from the Bible app that I have on my phone. And in the passage is from Galatians 5. And it reads, "You, my sisters and brothers, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love." You were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another in love. This app popped up on my phone yesterday, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I began to think about how I use the freedom I've been given. Yesterday was July 4th, and so it's a day that we talk a lot about freedom in the United States. And it's also a catalyst for us talking too about living lives in response to the grace and the freedom that God gives to us in our lives. So yesterday I journeyed through the day after seeing this verse. After seeing this verse about being called to freedom and encouraged not to indulge in the flesh, but to serve one another in love. And all kinds of interesting things happened yesterday. So yesterday morning, we have this road race in our neighborhood. It's called the Humbly Hustle. Years ago, another member of the neighborhood and I started it because it's hard to get childcare at 3:30 in the morning to go to the peach tree with my husband. So we decided to make an alternative. My husband ran his 31st, I think, peach tree yesterday. And we had our 7th Humbly Hustle. It's a 5K in our neighborhood, and another gentleman and I set out the signs and do some sidewalk chalk on the course and all the things. And so we did our Humbly Hustle, and it was lovely, by the way. If you're looking for a local 5K next July 4th, let me know. You can walk, you can run, just hustle is our theme. So we did the Humbly Hustle, and after the race, I said to the other gentleman that helps put it on, I said, "Why don't you let me go pick up the signs?" Because his son is training to be in the Navy, and he was only home for a little bit longer that day. I said, "Why don't you let me pick up the signs and y'all go be together?" So I went to pick up the signs along the course, and I brought my dogs with me in the car, and then I'd stop and pick up a sign and put it in the car and then go to the next one. Well, I got to the sign near a Trinity member's home. There's a woman who lives in my neighborhood, and she is 98 years old. And since the beginning of COVID, we have been mailing her the sermons for the week at Trinity. So towards the beginning of COVID, when everything was shut down, I asked the Stephen ministers of the congregation if they would divide up the people. There's the mail truck. There's always something, you know. My husband's already come home. Now there's a mail truck. life happens all around us, doesn't it? So, I was sharing with you that towards the beginning of COVID, I asked the Stephen ministers in the congregation to divide up our list of members and attendees, folks that we know, and call them all who were 75 and up. It may have been 70 and up, to see if they needed groceries, medication, any kind of support, and also to ask if they had the internet, and if not, if they would like to be, there's my daughter's friend, if they would like to be added to our mailing list so that we could mail sermons and documents to the folks that didn't have the internet and weren't able to join our services online. So this person that lives in my neighborhood was one of the folks that said, I don't have the internet, and I would love to have the services mailed to me each week. So that very first Easter, when we were all in lockdown, we had a handful of addresses for people that wanted to receive the sermon and the service in the mail. And that year we hand delivered them. Because this lady lives in my neighborhood, I hand delivered hers to her mailbox. I've tried to interact with her a few times since, but she can't hear real well over the phone and yada yada. So from time to time, different folks have checked in on her, but I haven't been able to touch base until yesterday. I didn't have the right phone number for her son, so I haven't been able to call him. But yesterday, when I was picking up the sign from the road race, I saw a gentleman in her yard. And I knew which one was her yard, right? Because I'd hand delivered the envelope. So that first Easter in COVID. So I said to the gentleman, are you Mr. blah, blah, blah? And he said, yes. And I said, in sweaty shorts and a t-shirt and a ponytail, I said, I'm Pastor Katie from Trinity. And he said, oh my. So I got to meet him and introduce myself and talk to him about the possibility of, I'd be happy to bring home communion if he wanted to meet me there sometime at his mom's, yada, yada, yada. I also let him know that I had hand delivered that first envelope with the sermon in it and the service for that first Easter in COVID. He talked about how much his mom enjoyed receiving those envelopes. And while he was talking to me, he checked the mail, and last Sunday's sermon, which I had written, was in the mailbox. And I thought, I see you, God. I see you, God. If I hadn't have asked and encouraged out of service to pick up the signs, I wouldn't have finally met this gentleman. And I hope that it was a God wink for him, that when he checked the mailbox, that the service from last Sunday was in there. It was really, really something. And so I hope that I'm going to be able to go and offer her home communion here sometime before too long, because I was able to make that connection. Because of God at work in me and God at work in him. Well, then I went to Publix, because I was trying to find this special kind of cheese that didn't have milk in it, because I wanted to make a special 4th of July salad. So I went to Publix. Zoom, zoom, zoom around Publix. Ran into a Trinity member, a couple other folks. Then I was going to check out. I realized that I'd forgotten the soy sauce. So I went to find the soy sauce, and there I saw a woman who will be helping my daughter with softball in the near future. And I thought I could grab the soy sauce and go, or I could take a minute to say hello to this woman and chat. I'd recently sent her my email address because she needed it for something related to my daughter, and my email address says Pastor Katie. And she said to me, how did I not ever know that you were a pastor? I said, well, I am. And she said, and where are you a pastor? I said, well, I serve at Trinity Lutheran down there on Killian Hill. And she said, people have told me to go there. I said, oh, say more about that. She said, well, I've been to a different place and I didn't really feel welcomed because of different folks in my family and different things. So folks encouraged me to go to Trinity, that they said that it's a very welcoming congregation and you meet people where they are and all the things. There I was in Publix by the seafood counter having this conversation that lasted 10 or 15 minutes about seeking to welcome others and to meet people where they are through God's grace. As I go through life, sometimes I have a tendency to get busy and to keep moving. The last couple of weeks, I have felt God reminding me to slow down. To slow down last week, 2 weeks ago, and to stop and to talk to the woman in Michigan, who then wound up coming to the service the following Sunday. To take the time yesterday morning to pick those signs up, where I then ran into this member's son, who I've been trying to get in touch with off and on for some time. Then at Publix, at the seafood counter, where I wasn't even headed, I was just looking for soy sauce, for goodness sakes. Running into somebody who was looking for an accepting church home. He leadeth me, O blessed thought. I do believe that God leads and guides us, especially when we take the moments to pause and to take that extra time to connect with people around us. I'm excited to hear from you, perhaps, about some ways that you see God at work through others, through you, about connections perhaps you're making in community. It's a wonderful thing, the way that God knits us all together as God's children. May our good Lord continue to lead and guide us, and may we, through God's grace, seek to serve one another in love with the freedom that we've been given. Sometimes, like in picking up those signs or at taking the time to stop and chat at Publix, sometimes those initial acts of service and connection can lead to so many wonderful things. I was blessed yesterday by 2 different people that I got to visit with that I hadn't really much before. May we trust our God to be at work in us and in others and in the world around us. And may God's peace be with you today and always. If you think about it, share your stories with me. I'd love to hear them. Take care.